that, because it really is about this relationships, about building these partnerships, about working together, about having this common vision, and then just a lot of hard work to make it happen. That's really what it's all about. We're proud to be a partner in the Kuali process, and that is really the Delta story in a nutshell. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about any of this. Thank you.
We've got about 10 minutes or so here, so this would be a good time. If there are any questions anyone in the community want to ask with Delta, we've got Lee here as well regarding their implementation and some of the choices made, and I'll join in too if it's something that's on one of the other projects related to Kuali. So we've got about 10 minutes here, and we'll still have time for a good break before we get out to coffee and such. Anything from the audience? Speak louder, and then I'll repeat the question.
So, Dr. Rodriguez, you mentioned you talked to other community colleges in California. As a California resident myself, my question to you is how have they perceived what Delta has done? Because I know that other community colleges throughout California have struggled with DataTel and PeopleSoft and Banner, and they're all sort of running their own kind of systems. And have we been able to elevate that conversation to a chancellor-type level to maybe rectify some of that?
Yeah, he's asking about how we engaged other community colleges and how are we going to try to elevate that conversation. So that's really what, when I talk about taking the show on the road, that's what we plan to do. Because it really hasn't been very high profile now. As I said, we've tried to have that conversation and it really hasn't gone very far because we didn't have anything to back it up with. It was really, it was vaporware until now we can say we've implemented it and we have it in place, so it's not vaporware anymore. And people have been burned in the past. I've talked to some of the CEOs across the state, and they're reluctant to get involved until they know it's going to be they don't mind taking some cautious risks, but they need to have some guarantee that there's really something there. So I think it's going to take off. My guess is that it's really going to get a lot of scrutiny with the publicity that we're getting, with the good stories that are coming out now. They're going to be spreading. Word of mouth will start spreading about this, and we'll try to make it a little more high profile and get out there and do more presentations like this and really out there, and Matt, the other folks on our team doing that. But I think there's going to be a pretty wide dialogue. The other thing that's hindered the dialogue too, I did mention this, is that if you look at our organizations that we have, not only in California but across the country, who underwrites a lot of the expenses for those organizations. So a lot of times it's the big software companies. So people have not wanted to step on the toes of those companies by engaging in this dialogue, coming out and endorsing open source or endorsing quality. And that's been a tough political issue, but I think we're at the point now where we're going to get past that.
Yeah, one of the things I'll add in that to commentary, I mean, if you watch the behavior of Microsoft with Linux, early on the comments were just kind of ignore it, and fairly antagonistic towards it, and then very deprecating towards Linux. And now Microsoft has settled into knowing Linux is part of the enterprise, and there are various connectors and things that actually work there. If you saw the Inside Higher Ed article in about July 2nd or so on Kuali, there were a number of commercial firms referenced in that article about Kuali that were taking a very different tone about this than some we have seen in the past. So, one thing that does make commercial firms and capitalism work over the decades is its eventual ability to adapt. So I think some of that adaptive behavior will come in time. I don't think that will be necessarily in the near term, but I think it will occur in time.
Just an example of that, I have a friend who was hired as a consultant by DataTel maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. And they wanted her to do a study, and a couple of other folks too, to do a study of the future, where was this going. And she came back, and in her report was very prominently, open source is really one of the major paths of the future. They didn't want to hear that, so they pretty much buried that report, and they're saying, we don't care, it's not what we're going to do, we're not about that. And so it's exactly what Brad is saying.
Barry?
Raul, John Robinson had calibrated me before we went to lunch, and it took me several minutes to validate that he was right. You're not the typical CEO that we encounter. As you say, we talk to either CIOs or CEOs that are not with a background in some IT like you, what's the best way for us to approach that?
Well,
What's the value proposition?
yeah, I think just kind of the selling points that we mentioned back to our campus, the way you sell in the CEO on this, it's going to save you money. You're going to be leverage your resources in so many different ways. All those wonderful things that I mentioned that sold me, I think any CEO would be sold on them. I don't see why they would, even whether they had a technical background or not. If it's going to save you money, if you're going to have a great return on investment, if you can take money and put it in other places rather than putting it into your technology, why wouldn't you want to do it? And to be a partner, frankly, with a prestigious university like Indiana, Cornell, for a little podunk community college like us, that's a great thing. And we've learned so much from working with them. I think they've learned some things working with us.
One of the things that I would add continues to be an important point that a lot of folks don't grasp the first order. But Indiana's investment and engagement across all of these projects, the Sakai, open source portfolio, the Kuali projects, this has been the best human capital development initiative we have ever done. We've probably had, I mean, I can count, but I bet we've had 20 promotions across our organizations of someone moving up to manager moving up to director, because learning to work in these communities makes you better at learning to work with the College of Arts and Sciences or working with the registrar or such. You learn skills that help promote staff development. And many people, someone told me just yesterday, this has been from one of our other institutions here, this has been the most exciting and engaging thing that this person had ever worked on in her career. And so that may not tip the balance with a CEO in that conversation, but it's got to be on the table. Taking packaged software rarely brings about that experience in human capital development. And there is no doubt, I really appreciate Raul bringing up that open educational resources, new models around textbooks, open courses. In the Chronicle, you may have seen about a month ago, a student was interviewed and said, I have two professors. I have my professor where I take my math course, but I have to go to the online lectures that are coming out of MIT's OpenCourseWare or some of the other institutions. That's where I have to go understand how to really do the chain rule. And that is the nature of where we're going. And so I think, and when I put Dan, one of the things he was trying to convey yesterday, it's easy for us to talk about cost savings. Those are important matters, particularly today. But Delta College, I think, is markedly ahead of many of its peers in gaining the skills in how to work in the world in which higher ed will need to thrive. And so I think that's got to be part of the conversation.
We know that because people are trying to steal our employees. So.
Raul, you mentioned how important the partnership was with RSmart. And Berkeley, as a very large research institution, even though we had a lot of resources, they tend to be balkanized in support of these very distributed areas. You had a different problem. You didn't have a large internal team. You couldn't have built this on your own. Can you share a little bit more about that experience in getting a commercial partner? Because I think that's a big barrier for many of the community colleges or smaller institutions that don't have the resource pool internally. They think open source, we can't do that because we don't have enough internally to be able to make that work.
I think any small, medium-sized college or university, when you do an implementation, you're going to have outside help anyway. You're going to have to hire someone to help you. But you can't do it alone. There are not many schools that can pull that off alone. So the difference for us, though, is that we started with RSmart in the very beginning, and they've been a fantastic partner for us. They've understood open source, and that makes a big difference. They're not just out to, yes, they're for profit, they want to make money, and that's great. We support that. But they've understood the open source concept from the beginning, and that is just makes all the difference in the world, because they understand where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do. They understand, they've come in and understood the culture of our organization. They've really become part of it in many ways. And so it's been a different kind of relationship than what we've had with other consulting organizations in the past. So